Welcome to the Horror Next Door. This is all the horror movies we watched in May 2022. Links to our Letterboxd accounts are in the description box below. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing.
Rabid from 1977, which we rented on Netflix disc. This is early David Cronenberg. I actually just mentioned in our May favorite horror trailers video that I'm not a huge fan of David Cronenberg. I can definitely appreciate what he does. It's very imaginative. There's a lot of really disturbing plot points and especially disturbing body horror. But this is definitely one of my least favorite movies of his I've ever seen. It just was sort of slow, a little bit confusing. It was just really weird. I don't really know much to say about it because I wasn't super duper into it. Unfortunately, I can't recommend it. And if you love David Cronenberg, please don't be mad at me. We all have our different opinions. Thanks.
I do not recommend this movie either. Unless you're like a huge David Cronenberg fan and you've never seen this movie, then sure, go out and see it. But I wasn't hugely into this one. I think I enjoyed the setup to the movie with her getting into the accident and everything and going to this lab hospital thing. It's not even really a hospital, just some place where there's just happen to be doctors. Yeah, plastic surgery place. Once she got there and they fixed her up and everything, and then things started getting weird, it just, for me, it just kind of went downhill from there. And I don't know, I just couldn't get into it.
He definitely has better movies out there. I mean, don't prioritize this one.
They did make a remake of this, and we're still contemplating whether or not we want to go check that out. Night of the Living Dead from 1968, which we watched on Shudder with Joe Bob. We actually watched this pretty recently and talked about it in one of our What We Watched videos. We just happened to watch it again with Joe Bob because it was an episode we didn't see yet, so we watched it again. Just to sum it up, it's a classic. If you haven't seen it, you should check it out. It's great. Even the remake from 1990 was great. Both of them are great. George Romero's king.
Yep, no need to go into this one since we've already mentioned it, and most horror fans have probably seen it and know how badass it is. It's credited with starting the whole zombie thing pretty much most of the time, so definitely recommend it, and not sure how many times I've seen it in my life now, but it's been a lot, and I don't regret it. Last Night in Soho from 2021, which we watched on a rented Netflix disc. Oh yeah, the first Netflix disc we got did not work, and I was all excited to watch this, so I had to wait for a second one to come. As far as the movie itself is concerned, I was a little bit disappointed, I hate to say. I just thought that the trailer made it look epic, and once I was actually watching it, I felt a little bit underwhelmed. I did think that a lot of the visual musical cues were powerful, and I thought the acting was great across the board. Matt Smith rules. We are Anya fans in this household. So, again, great cast, great acting. I'm not even sure how to explain why I felt underwhelmed. I guess it's just because a lot of people have been saying it's like so epic and so amazing and best horror movie of 2021 and things like that. And I don't know, I didn't feel it. I did think the twist was cool. I really, really appreciate the fact that they did a lot of the mirror imagery and things with the two different actresses practically instead of just totally CGIing everything. I think that's really cool. I would recommend the movie, and I still did very much like it. It's just not, I was going to run out and buy it, and I don't think I will now that I've actually seen it, so.
So I know some people will probably say this really isn't a horror film, and I mean, I guess I could see that argument, but it sort of kind of is. I feel like as glossy and flashy that this movie is, there is a lot of messed up stuff going on, and especially when they start revealing things, there's a whole plot line that evolves that's really messed up. That being said, I mean, it does have some horror elements to it. So, and there is one scene in particular that is very bloody, like just a lot of blood. We didn't expect something like that all of a sudden, especially in a movie like this, just how it started and everything. Just did not expect all that blood all of a sudden, but it was cool. So that being said, I would recommend this movie. Anthropophagous from 1980, which we also watched on Shudder with Joe Bob. I honestly feel like there really isn't much to this movie until you get to the last 10 minutes or so, maybe 15. There's a lot of gory scenes at the end. Not going to go into any detail just in case you haven't seen it, but if there's only one reason to check it out, it's for the last 15 minutes or so. I'm kind of in the middle on recommending it. I guess I would recommend it just for you to see the iconic scenes.
I definitely didn't ever think I would watch this movie a second time because Psycho and I had already seen it, but we love Joe Bob. We've both loved him since we were young, so we watch every episode. Obviously, we get behind sometimes, but hey, watching it with him is always a lot more interesting. You learn so much more about the filmmaking process, the people in it, just everything, and that made it an enjoyable second watch. As far as the movie itself, I agree. There's really not a lot going on until you get to gore scenes. There's some pretty gnarly, nasty stuff going on. But then again, I've seen gnarlier and nastier stuff in other horror movies, and the acting certainly leaves something to be desired at times. So I'm on the fence with recommending this too, but I do think it's worth a one-time watch. The Hills Have Eyes from 2006, which we watched on Tubi. We actually own this, but one lazy Saturday, we were just kind of like chilling on the couch, and I pulled up Tubi for some reason. We were just scrolling around, and Psycho was just like, we should watch The Hills Have Eyes. I haven't seen that remake in a really long time. And I was like, okay. So we did. And actually, the only other time I had seen it was back when it was in the theater. So it was good to get a refresher. I dropped my rating just a teeny little half star because I didn't like it quite as much as I remember. But I do think this is one of the better remakes that I've ever seen. It's very, very nasty and just, ooh, yeah, it's pretty gross. However, it's a bajillion million trillion times better than the sequel that they made. Don't even watch that, please. Anyway, I do definitely recommend it. The original Wes Craven version is awesome too. And this doesn't stray too drastically far from that, which is... it's cool, but it does its own thing at the same time, which is probably what a good remake should be doing.
I actually highly recommend this movie if you haven't seen it. I know a lot of people crap all over remakes and say that remakes are all garbage, but in my opinion, this is one of the few of the good ones. So this remake was directed by Alexandre Aja. I think I'm pronouncing that right. He directed High Tension, which if you haven't seen, I highly recommend it. You should go check it out. It's a French horror film. He did this movie, I guess, not too long after that one or a few years after that one. And I feel like the grittiness of High Tension really comes into this movie. And this movie is just really dirty and gross. So I think that's one reason why I really like it. Highly recommend it. Go check it out. Excision from 2012, which we own on DVD. So apparently I had watched this movie before a long time ago and forgot all about it and really didn't remember anything about it. And Hellcat was like, you gotta watch this movie again and change your rating. So I said, all right, let's give it another shot. So I gave it another shot, and this movie is weird. As you know, weird is a good thing. I'm not as into it as Hellcat, but I definitely upped my rating from what I had before. I would recommend it at least once. It's one of those weird movies you got to check out just to say, hey, have you seen this movie?
Yes, I purchased this DVD a long time ago as well, like pretty much right after I saw it. I really, really loved it. I gave it 5 stars. I thought the world of it. Upon a rewatch, I did see a couple of areas where it was dragging just a tiny bit and stuff, even though it's not a lengthy movie at all. It just, it did start out as a short film, and sometimes trying to extend a short film into a full length can be a little bit of a challenge. So I just dropped it down a teeny little half a star, but it still gets a lot of love from me. I just think that the visuals, there's a lot of blood in this movie. Like an insane amount, and the visuals are just so striking and unique and memorable. In addition to the crazy little artsy cutaway scenes, you have really amazing acting from Annalyn McCord. Like, she's just so creepy and weird, and I don't want to be mean, but anything else I've ever seen her in, I did not like her. For me to love this movie so much, even though I'm not a fan of hers as an actress, that really says a lot. We also have like Tracy Lords, Roger Bart, John Waters, Malcolm McDowell, Matthew Gray Grubler, Ray Wise. Like, there's a lot of awesome people that keep popping up in this movie. people that I forgot were even in this movie. I guess you could call this a little bit on the artsy-fartsy side, but it is also very disturbing. I highly recommend it, but you have to be, into the little bit of the artsy-fartsy side, as Psycho calls it, and I know he usually isn't, which is probably why I like it way more. Fresh from 2022, which we watched on Hulu. This I randomly just put on, like Psycho was in the other room and he's like, what'd you pick? Because you know how it is with all these streaming services, you're constantly trying to find something to watch. He's like, what'd you pick? And I was just like, well, you'll see when the credits come up. Of all movies for me to do that with, how long did it take for the title to come on? The title screen?
It was like 30 minutes or something.
It was a really long time. I mean, he figured it out before that happened, but I was like, that's hilarious. Anyway, we went into this completely blind. We just saw people logging it like crazy on Letterboxd. Like every time I logged in, I saw that little image of the hand in the plastic wrap. And I was like, oh my glob. Like I'm so sick of seeing this. I want to see it for myself. I was so pleasantly surprised. I was blown away by this movie. I think going in blind is probably the best thing you could do because you can guess what's going on by the image of the hand in the plastic wrap, but you're not going to get it right, more than likely. And especially not as involved as it gets. I don't even want to say too much to give anything away. I'm just going to say that Sebastian Stan is so creepy. I will never look at him the same again. And this movie rules. I completely recommend it.
So on a side note, the only other movie that I know of that has a really long intro and then shows the title card is the Friday the 13th remake. Just thought I'd throw that out there. I really, really, really enjoyed this movie. I thought it was perfect blend of just messed up shit and humor and things. I don't know. I thought this movie was damn near perfect. I really did like Sebastian Stan, the Winter Soldier, being a creep. And again, not to give anything away, I'm not spoiling anything, but the scene where he's dancing around to his music was probably one of my favorite parts. I highly recommend this movie. You should check it out. Ghoulies from 1985, which we rented on Netflix. I was highly disappointed with this movie. As you can see with the poster and everything, thought it was going to be like a Gremlins type deal or maybe like a Puppet Master type deal, but the Ghoulies, quote unquote, are barely in this movie. I bet you if you added up all their screen time, it's probably not even 5 minutes. Most of the movie just deals with random characters doing sorcery type things, and it's just, I don't know, it just wasn't good. I did not like it, and I do not recommend it.
Yep, exactly what Psycho said. The Ghoulies are barely in it. Why is it even called Ghoulies? I almost feel like if they wanted to make this movie, they should have called it something else and have them be featured slightly. Obviously, they were just trying to appeal to, audiences that were into Gremlins and things of that nature. Psycho and I both thought that we had seen this when we were kids, but now that we've rewatched it, we're not sure we ever did, because even when the Ghoulies were in the movie, they barely did anything, and we remember the Ghoulies, so I don't know what's going on there, but regardless, I unfortunately cannot recommend this movie either. Black Roses from 1988, which we also watched on Shudder with Joe Bob. I had already seen this movie, Psycho had never seen it. I wasn't really about trying to watch it again, but obviously I want to see Joe Bob and hear all his fun facts and everything, so again, it was a more enjoyable experience thanks to him and the last drive-in crew. But I don't really recommend this movie. I guess I could say it would be good to watch once. I just think there are a lot of really weird things that didn't need to be in the movie. Underage, older person combinations and stuff like that. And then just the effects and the really corny music when there is music. I mean, when you read the description of this, you would think that maybe the music would be featured more and it would be much more metal and much more dark. But even when they are, being all evil or whatever, he's supposed to be Satan or whatever, he's supposed to be a demon or something, the music's not metal. Like, it's just blah. And I feel like that's one of the only things that could have been enjoyable about this. It has really weird effects, and I do not understand what the ever-loving hell was going on at the end. So I'm sorry if you like this movie, because I know it has its fans, but I personally don't recommend it to other people.
I feel like there's really not much for me to say about this movie. I really didn't like it. It wasn't really that fun. There was maybe some fun scenes, but overall, didn't like it. I do not recommend it. Friday the 13th Part 3 from 1982, which we watched on Blu-ray. We watched this on Friday the 13th, and if you follow us on Instagram, you would have known that we spin a wheel every Friday the 13th to see which Friday the 13th movie we're going to watch, because trying to watch a bunch of them all in one night is, kind of hard to do, especially when you work a full-time job and you're getting old. So dedicating one movie every Friday the 13th isn't that hard. So we spin the wheel, and it landed on Friday the 13th Part 3. Last time it was Freddy vs. Jason, if you've been watching. And Friday the 13th Part 3 is one of my favorites. It's definitely in the top 4, probably. Rest in peace, Richard Brooker as Jason. If you haven't seen this movie, you need to go see it immediately, as well as all the other Friday the 13th movies, because they're fucking great.
For context, I'm over here rolling my eyes a little bit, sorry.
5 stars. Check it out.
Psycho says, check it out. Yeah, I actually really like this one too. I'm not throwing any shade at the Friday the 13th franchise. Everybody just knows that I like Freddy better. And I mix up all the Friday the 13th all the time. I don't care how many times I've seen them. I cannot keep them straight, except for like Jason X, because it's it's in space. But other than that, I just mix them up all the fracking time. It's because they all are just such similar movies. I think the reason that the second one is my favorite in the whole series is because it stands out, because it's not as it's better quality than the first one, and there's more happening, but it's not as over the top gore, constant killing, makey outy, nudity, sex scene type thing, and then people die over and over. So this one walks the line between both of those things, and I really like it, and it's definitely fun to watch, and it's definitely one of my highest rated in the Friday the 13th franchise, so I certainly do recommend it. Oh, and also I have to add that the awesome intro to this with the jammin' tunes is one of my favorite things about it. I love grooving out to that sweet music while the 3D words are coming at me. Woo!
And I just want to add that one day you will know all the Friday the 13th movies. What happens in all of them. Who plays all the Jasons. Which mask is from which movie. You're going to know all this stuff. Just saying.
Ghoulies 2 from 1987, which we also watched on a rented Netflix disc. It was actually one of those double-sided ones, which are kind of a pain in the butt, aren't they? Anyhoodle, guess what? This movie is a bajillion times better than the original one. The Ghoulies puppets look better. They got a makeover. They got an upgrade. And they're in the movie way more. They are the featured subject, hence the title. It's fitting that they're actually in it, right? And they actually do things. They're attacking people, vomiting on people, torturing people, etc. In addition to that, little Donnie Jeffcoat from the original Night of the Demons, the little smart-ass kid that talks about sun-dried poodle turds, is in this, and he's pretty much the exact same character. And I love Night of the Demons so much, and that kid has always entertained me so frackin' much. I think he's hilarious. So when he was in this, acting like pretty much the exact same character, I was like, hell yeah. I definitely recommend this movie. It's really fun. If you like, Puppet Master and things like that, with little dudes running around giving people hell, it's a great recommendation.
I highly recommend this movie. It's so much better than the first Ghoulies. Obviously, as Hellcat said, the Ghoulies are actually in this movie, and it takes place in a carnival. There's a freak show, and there's a scary haunted house type thing. So the setting is so much better. I love the carnival stuff. I love them running amok and doing their thing. And then at the end of the movie, there's an even bigger ghoulie that shows up, and he's the size of a full-grown human, and he's going around. It's pretty good. I highly recommend it. Check it out. 47 Meters Down, Uncaged, from 2019. So the first 47 Meters Down was good. I wasn't blown away by it like everybody else seemed to be at the time. I just thought it was good. It was average. Do not know why they made a sequel, but I rented it on Netflix anyway. Why not? That being said, I did not enjoy this movie. There were a couple of parts that were unintentionally funny, so it was enjoyable in that way. There was a lot of stuff that was very convenient for the plot, which is not good. So I do not recommend this movie.
I had told Psycho that I didn't want to watch this, and I've never even seen the first one. I don't know why, but these movies just don't interest me. I guess if I was going to watch a shark movie, I'd just rewatch a good one, like Jaws or The Shallows, but regardless, I don't recommend this at all. I know I was playing on my phone literally the entire time. I mean, I tried to give it a chance at the beginning, but all the characters are really annoying. Some of the effects are really bad, and I also just felt like if they wouldn't have been effing around in there and could have left the shark alone. I mean, it's like a... I remember liking a review, actually. It just came back to me. I liked a review on Letterboxd where the guy said something like, this is actually a home invasion film where a bunch of teenagers invade the shark's house or something. I think that's hilarious, and it's so true. The ending of this movie was so outlandish and over the top. It was pretty much the only time besides the first part where I was trying to give it a chance that I paid attention to. So if you were going to watch it and you weren't liking it, just fast forward to, what did you say, like the last 10 minutes or something? I don't even know. But the very end where there's like a glass bottom boat tour thing there, just watch that part. No recommendation from me. The Fear Chamber from 2009, which we watched on a crappy horror movie pack. This is one that I had already seen in the past, unfortunately, and was rewatching so that Psycho could see it because we're going through all of my crappy packs. Yeah, it's definitely not one of the very worst in any of these DVD packs, but it's also not good. It's actually really kind of confusing. They do a lot of weird cuts and flashbacks and things that, from the main detective guy's point of view, it just confuses the plot a little bit. It's really not a complicated plot at all. It's basically just this killer that the detective has been hunting for a long time. I don't know why they had to make it weird. I can't really recommend this movie. The only reason I even remember what it was, even though I've seen it twice, is because Psycho said, oh, this has the guy from Kindergarten Cop. Like the villain guy with the long hair. He's in it. And that's the only way I could remember which movie this was. So yeah, can't recommend it.
So we watched this movie about 3 weeks ago, and literally the only thing I remember is the Kindergarten Cop guy with some weird face paint on his face. That's all I remember. So I do not recommend this movie. Black Sunday from 1960, which we watched on Shudder with Joe Bob. I feel like this movie was just okay for me. I couldn't really get into it very much. I'm definitely not one of the black and white snobs that just can't watch a movie because it's not in color. It's not that at all. We've seen a lot of movies from, the 30s and the 50s and things, and I just feel like some of the other movies we've watched were a little bit better than this one. This movie is regarded as a classic, so to speak, but I just couldn't really get into this one. It's kind of hard for me to recommend this movie. I'm still kind of on the fence about it.
Neither of us had seen this before watching it with Joe Bob, so having all of the detailed information about its creation and its production and stuff was really cool. I was very interested in everything he was saying about Barbara Steele. I'm like, dang. She sounds like she was not easy or fun to work with. Not being mean, just saying. Those things are interesting to know, especially when you're seeing the outcome of the person's acting and her interactions with the other actors on screen and things like that. I do agree, though. I wasn't super duper into the story either. It's not for a lack of trying. I actually had seen this poster and the images of Barbara Steele's character with like the little sores or wart things or whatever they are all over her face a bajillion times. And I was like, oh man, I'm excited to finally see this. I did think it was kind of cool how she was, hypnotizing people or putting a spell on people or whatnot. I don't know. Other than that, I guess I don't remember a whole lot about it. So I agree. It's a little bit hard for me to say, yes, this is awesome. Go watch it. But I guess I would still recommend it because it is regarded as a classic. And I think on the last drive-in, Darcy said, oh, it's one of the best horror movies of all time and stuff like that. So, I mean, obviously, some people are going to like it more than others. And maybe we just weren't really in the mood to watch something like this that night. I don't know. Death by Temptation from 1990, which we watched on Shudder with Joe Bob. I would never ever have watched this otherwise if I had seen a trailer for it or anything. Just Wow. I mean, I don't even know what to say about this. The plot, I guess, could have been cool, but I don't even know what it is about this movie that just did not work. Again, I just sort of feel like the editing and the way they painted things, how sometimes it was like this fantasy world and then other times it was completely rooted in reality. It got a little like muddy for me, and then on top of that, just the acting was whatever. Like, I don't know. I definitely don't recommend this movie.
I agree that some of the acting in this movie is not very good, but I do think the woman that played the Temptress did a really good job. She's probably the highlight of the movie. But that being said, I really just didn't like this movie, and I do not recommend it. And now that I've seen the poster for this, because they don't show you the poster when you're watching it on Joe Bob, but when I saw the poster, it immediately made me think of Arnold Schwarzenegger's face from Total Recall when he's like outside and like exposed to the atmosphere or whatever. Just looks just like that to me. Sorry. Rosemary's Baby from 1968, which we watched on Blu-ray. This is my first time seeing this movie. I had seen Rob Zombie's Lords of Salem years ago. Hellcat over the years has reminded me that Lords of Salem ripped off Rosemary's Baby. And one day we were going to watch Rosemary's Baby, and we finally did. And I have to agree that I can see where Rob Zombie got some or all of the ideas for Lords of Salem. But this movie was really good. I really enjoyed it. I know we don't talk about what we rate our movies on here, but I'll just say that I don't really give out 5-star ratings very often. I gave this 5 stars. I really enjoyed this movie. If you haven't seen it, you should probably check it out.
I was very excited to watch this again. It blew me away the first time I watched it. I think some people could possibly be turned off of this movie because they might think it's slow or uneventful, but watching it more than once is really an amazing experience because every time you watch it, you'll find something new. Oh, this means that, or that person did that because of this. And I also just think the acting in this is amazing, especially obviously by Mia Farrow, and it's just so engaging. We were talking about it for a while after it was done. We were making dinner and we were just talking and talking. It's that kind of a movie. And I mentioned that it just has this aura and this vibe to it. You feel just this discomfort and this like weight while you're watching it. And it takes a lot for a movie to have such atmosphere like that, to actually engage you in such a way and make you feel such a way. This is one of those really rare movies, and I could not recommend it enough. I absolutely love it. If you haven't seen it, please watch it. Haunted from Within from 2004, which we watched on a crappy horror movie pack. Again, I had already seen this, and that is unfortunate. I mean, I know I talk crap about the acting in Death by Temptation, but this movie makes those look like Oscar-worthy performances across the fracking board. And we've all seen or heard La Llorona stuff more than enough by now. There's no reason to go back to a low-budget 2004 poorly acted poor effects thing like this. I do not recommend it.
Again, I really don't remember much about this movie, so I do not recommend it. Doll Graveyard from 2005, which we watched on a crappy horror movie pack. So this is another one of those doll movies or puppet type movies. Was hoping this would be a little bit more like Puppet Master. It was to an extent, but it's made by the same company that made Puppet Master, but I just feel like this one wasn't as fun as the Puppet Master movies. Also, this movie was super short. This movie is 71 minutes, but that's with the long opening credits and the credits at the end. So the movie's more like 60-some minutes.
Yeah, the slowest closing credits you will ever see in your life.
I don't know. I feel like this movie's just really average. It's a fun watch, but I really wouldn't recommend it.
I think that the short runtime is part of what makes this something that I can recommend. I do think that the dolls are very creative and weird. I have no idea why a little girl would have dolls that look like this ever at all. When they're attacking the characters in the movie, I'm like, hell yeah, because almost every character is really obnoxious and annoying. You can definitely tell it's a Full Moon production in its similarities to Puppet Master, but again, it just seems like they didn't put as much thought, love, or care into this as they did the Puppet Masters. You know, maybe they were going to make a whole bunch of these, but it wasn't successful or something. I would still recommend it. I definitely know I liked it more than Psycho. It was something I had seen for a second time, and I still thought it was pretty fun. So if you've got an hour to kill, go for it. The Sadness from 2021, which we watched on Shudder. Well, there's been a lot of hype, for lack of a better term, recently about this movie and how it's offending people. There's content that is just, offensive to a lot of people or disturbs a lot of people. And we knew that going in. We didn't know to what extent, but I would say I've seen some really disturbing movies, and there were still things about this that got to me. The gore effects are epic. They're so disgusting and gnarly and over the top. Another insane amount of blood scene. I actually couldn't rate this because I was so up and down with it. It's definitely an experience. It's not that I didn't like it, and I would recommend it for anyone that can tolerate a really insane amount of gore and, the list of trigger warnings, which I won't go into here. Just make sure you check into it a little bit if you're sensitive to certain, typical trigger warning things. Overall, I'm glad I watched it. I don't know if I would ever watch it again. So again, it's kind of like, how do I rate something where I'm like, yay, but also absolutely no. You'll see what I mean if you watch it, because there are a lot of specific things that are just like super WTF moments. Something that I told someone else when I was trying to explain why I didn't rate it is that the stuff that is offensive, most of it anyway, it's actually, I know this is going to sound so weird because this movie is what it is, but it was done in a sort of tasteful way. Like, I guess I just probably need a thesaurus for a better word than tasteful to use in this context. But since we're sitting here recording, and I'm not going to do that, I just mean they don't show everything they could have shown the way other, more ridiculous movies might.
Yes, there are things in The Sadness that would trigger certain people or offend certain people, but I feel like the offensive parts of the movie don't take up much of the runtime. Unlike films like The Human Centipede 3 or a Serbian film, which pretty much takes up the entire runtime. Do not watch those movies. I recommend you watch this movie. So that being said, the gore effects in this movie are pretty top-notch. This movie is disgusting in parts, very gory. Good job. Storyline is pretty basic, but I mean...
That's not what you're here for
yeah,
when you watch this movie.
You're not here for the storyline. You're here for some crazy shit. So yeah, recommend it. Give it a watch, even if you're on the fence about the questionable material. Doesn't really take up much of the runtime. I think you'll like it. Duel from 1971, which I rented on Netflix. I know some people might say that this is more of a thriller than a horror movie, but sometimes thrillers and horror movies kind of blend together. Plus, a crazy guy in a ugly tractor trailer chasing you down and trying to kill you on the highway. Sounds like horror to me. This is Steven Spielberg's first ever movie. It's a TV movie that he made before he did Jaws. If you've never seen it, I highly recommend it. I've seen it a few times now. Should probably just buy it. I think it's really good. I think it's very suspenseful for just it being, a man in a car and a mysterious guy in a tractor trailer for, 95% of the movie. I think it's very well done and just keeps you on the edge of your seat the entire time. So yeah, I highly recommend it. And I just want to add that when we watched it this time, I, for some reason, got the feeling that I wouldn't be surprised if the creators of Jeepers Creepers were inspired by the truck in this movie.
This was an awesome movie. Psycho rented it again because he wanted me to see it because I never had. I agree that it's very suspenseful. You feel tense and frustrated the whole time. The setting and everything about it, it's hot and he's sweating and he's stressed and it's everything about it. You feel like you are in it and it's just stressful, but it's a good film. It's an experience. If you can actually feel the movie and be involved and be on the edge of your seat, obviously, it's a job well done. I cannot believe this was just a TV movie. Like, it's so good. And you would never, ever know that because most of the time when you think TV movie, you think low budget, kind of rushed, this or that. This is really, really good and I definitely recommend it. I am so sorry that we are ending this video on such a wah-wah, but the last one we watched in May was Killjoy from 2000 because it was the last one on a crappy horror movie pack that we hadn't seen. When it first started, Psycho said, "We need to watch all these, let's watch all these," and I said no. And then as we got into the movie, he said, "Oh, you're right, we're not watching all these." This movie was so bad. I mean, man, oh man, I can't even explain it. And even the cover makes the clown look cooler than he really is in the movie. And on the cover, he still looks kind of stupid, in my humble opinion. So I can't even explain this. I just have to say that it's terrible. It's one of the worst movies I've seen in recent memory, even including other crappy horror movie packs that I said were the worst. And I have a tag on there, the worst, and this is on it. So there you go. I do not recommend it, obviously.
So upon searching this series up, they made 5 of these movies. 5 of these movies. Yes, there's that part of me that wants to watch them all just to be a completionist, but no, probably not ever going to watch the other ones. So this movie came out in the year 2000, and just as a fun little thing here, I looked at the other movies that we've watched from the year 2000. Killjoy came out the same year as Battle Royale, the original Final Destination, American Psycho, The Cell, Scream 3, Ginger Snaps, all these movies. And then there's Killjoy. Go watch any of those other movies, even Scream 3, which I'm not a fan of. Go watch that. Do not watch this movie. Sorry.
We simply cannot end this on Killjoy. I just have to give a quick shout out to a movie called Curdled from 1996. I've been stalking it for a while, waiting for the used price to go down a bit, and it did, so we also watched it in May. It's just that Psycho didn't feel like it really fit into the horror category, so I just want to toss it in at the end and recommend it. Even though it might not strictly be horror, it is about crime scene cleanup after murders and suicides and things like that, where there's lots of mess and blood and things. It features Angela Jones, who is the taxi driver in Pulp Fiction, and she's really cute and funny and, a little crazy in this movie. So it's really good. I like it a lot. I'd go so far as to say I love it, and I want to recommend it, even if it's not 100% horror. As always, we thank you so much for watching. Leave us a comment if you have any horror movie recommendations, and we will add them to our watch list. Until next time.